My name is Diana Moore, and this is the beginning of a story I once tried to hide, a story I never imagined would become the turning point of my life. When I look back now, I see all the small signs that hinted at what was coming, but at the time, everything seemed ordinary, even peaceful. I grew up on Willow Lane, a quiet street in Harborview, a small coastal town in Maine, America, where houses stood far enough apart to give families privacy, but close enough for neighbors to wave from their porches. Our home was a tall white house with green shutters, a wide wooden porch, and a roof that creaked every time the wind from the ocean rolled inland. My parents, Ruth and Jonathan, treated that house as proof that they had made it in America. They always said, "This is our castle, Diana. Remember that." And I did. I remembered every detail of that house, especially the big maple tree in the front yard that dropped red leaves like soft rain each fall. My younger sister, Chloe, and I had opposite personalities from the beginning. I was quiet, organized, and careful with money, while Chloe was louder, flashier, and always chasing something bigger than what she already had. She wanted the newest clothes, the best phone, and the most attention wherever she went. People thought she was charming, and sometimes she was, but she also carried a hunger for more admiration, more compliments, more everything. I used to believe that our differences balanced each other. Looking back, I see now that we were growing in separate directions long before anything dramatic ever happened. When I was 27, I met Marcus Hill in a small coffee shop in Boston while visiting a friend. He had a careful smile and warm brown eyes that made it easy to relax around him. He said he worked in real estate, mostly helping families buy homes along the East Coast, and he had a calm way of speaking that made ordinary things sound important. He asked for my number after we talked for almost an hour, and something about his gentle confidence made me say yes without hesitation. We ended up dating for a year, and for the first time, I felt like someone truly saw me, not just the quiet daughter or the organized sister, but a woman who could be loved deeply. After a year together, Marcus proposed to me in the same Boston coffee shop where we had met. He knelt beside my chair, holding a small silver ring with a modest diamond, and I remember the way my heart lifted into my throat. People around us clapped when I said yes, and I felt like I was stepping into the life I had always dreamed of, stable, loving, and full of plans. I imagined a future that finally belonged to me. I imagined a home of my own someday, maybe not as big as the house on Willow Lane, but warm and safe. I imagined a honeymoon filled with bright city lights in New York, followed by a quiet escape to London and Europe, where we would spend pounds on bookstores, cafes, and long walks. To save money for our wedding, I moved back into the house on Willow Lane. My room, the big one at the front of the house, had a wide window that faced the street. I used to call it my sky window, because from that angle, I could see the tops of the town's trees, the passing clouds, and sometimes the moon sitting low in the sky like a lantern. Every evening after work, I sat at my small wooden desk beneath that window and planned our future. I worked at a local accounting office in Portland, and although the job wasn't glamorous, it paid steadily. I managed to save almost $8,000, dollar by dollar, week by week. That money felt like a promise. Proof that Marcus and I were building something real. Marcus and I often talked about our future in long, gentle conversations over the phone. One night, I told him, "We can spend a whole week in New York and maybe a few days in London after. We'll exchange some of the money into pounds when we get there." He laughed softly, the way he always did when he thought I was being adorably serious, and said, "Look at you, planning our whole future." I smiled because planning felt natural to me. It made me feel safe. And planning a future with him felt like building the life I had waited for since I was a girl sitting on that porch under the maple tree. I bought a simple white dress for the wedding, nothing extravagant, just elegant enough to match the small ceremony we had in mind. I picked soft flowers in shades of cream and pale green. I printed lists of guest names, hotel prices in dollars, travel estimates, and packing reminders. I even practiced my signature with his last name, writing Diana Hill, over and over in the margins of my notebook. Each time I wrote it, I felt a quiet thrill spread through my chest. But while I sat at that desk, writing and saving and dreaming, Something else was unfolding in the same house, something I had no reason to suspect. Chloe had been spending more time at home around the same period. She said she needed a break from her job in Durham, New Hampshire, and my parents welcomed her without question. I thought nothing of it. I believed her. I believed everyone. When she asked casual questions about Marcus, where we met, what he liked to eat, what he wanted for the future, I thought she was simply trying to be interested in my happiness. She was my sister after all. Why would I ever imagine that she had another motive? I now see that while I was planning every detail of my future with a hopeful heart, the foundations beneath me were shifting quietly and dangerously. My big room, my sky window, my lists, my dreams, they all felt solid, but they were standing on a truth I had not yet discovered. I didn't know then that betrayal can grow silently, like weeds in a garden you're too busy admiring to notice. At that time, all I saw was a future that looked bright. I felt secure. I felt chosen. I felt loved. I didn't know that the real story, the painful story, the story I am finally brave enough to tell, was already beginning behind my back, under the same roof, in the very house I had trusted my whole life. And that was the last peaceful chapter before everything changed. The morning that shattered my life began quietly, almost peacefully. Sometimes I think that's the cruelest part, that nothing felt wrong at all when I opened my eyes. I woke in my big room on the second floor, sunlight falling in wide gold stripes across the wooden floorboards. My sky window, as I always called it, was glowing with early light, the kind that makes you believe the day will be simple and kind. I wrapped myself in a soft blue sweater, walked downstairs, and made a cup of coffee in the kitchen. The house smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon, the comfortable sense of the life I was still holding on to. I had no idea that in a few hours, that life would split in two like a cracked plate. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, a notebook beside me filled with wedding plans, travel lists, and numbers written neatly in columns. Our wedding date was exactly 3 weeks away, and I had reached the stage where everything felt almost ready. All I needed to do was finalize the hotel booking for New York City, the place I had dreamed of visiting with Marcus ever since he told me he loved the bright lights and endless energy of Manhattan. I found a hotel in Midtown that cost $220 per night, and I was running the numbers to see how many nights we could stay without dipping too deeply into my savings. Every dollar mattered because that $8,000 had taken me years to collect. I didn't mind spending it, though, not then. I thought I was spending it on the beginning of forever. I was writing a small note, confirm reservation by Friday, when I heard the front door open. It was a firm, confident push, not the soft shuffle of my mother returning from the garden or the measured steps of my father coming in from the yard. For a moment, I assumed it was a package delivery, or maybe my father coming home early from the hardware store. But then I heard it, a laugh that didn't belong to either of them. It was Chloe. My body froze instinctively. I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the sharpness in her voice or the unusual pitch of her laugh. Something about it felt triumphant, like she had already won a game she hadn't told me she was playing. Before I had time to stand, she appeared in the doorway of the living room wearing a short white dress, white, of all colors, with bright red lipstick that looked almost too bold for morning light. Her hair was curled and pinned the way she only styled it for parties. And then, behind her, stepping through the doorway with a strange mixture of pride and shame on his face, was Marcus. My Marcus. He wore a dark suit, the same one he had worn on our anniversary dinner in Boston, though his tie was loosened as if he had rushed somewhere. His hair was brushed back neatly, and his cheeks were a little flushed, as though he had been running or arguing or celebrating. I felt my entire oxygen supply vanish. What's going on? I asked, though the words barely escaped my throat. They sounded small, fragile, like I was learning to speak for the first time. Chloe took a step forward, smiling in a way I had never seen before, sharp, wide, full of something almost wicked. She lifted her left hand like she was showing off a prize she had just won on a game show. A gold band gleamed on her ring finger. "This," she said cheerfully, "is my husband." For a second, everything in my brain stopped moving. I heard nothing, Not the humming refrigerator, not the ticking clock on the wall, just a loud ringing sound inside my ears. My eyes dropped to her ring, then to Marcus's hand. He had a ring too. There was no misunderstanding this. No joke. What are you talking about? I whispered. Marcus looked at the floor, his shoulders tense. He didn't even attempt to smile. We got married this morning, Chloe said, as if she were telling me they bought groceries. In Portland, at the courthouse. It was quick, but it's legal. I took a step back. The room felt like it was spinning. Tell me this is a joke, I said to Marcus, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. Any sign that I still mattered. He swallowed. I'm sorry, Diana, he said quietly. It just happened. Chloe and we fell in love. She understands me better. The worst part wasn't the words. It was that he didn't even try to touch my hand or look in my eyes. The betrayal felt physical, like teeth sinking into my chest. Before I could respond, my parents entered from the hallway. My mother stood beside Chloe, her expression strangely calm, and my father folded his arms across his chest like he had rehearsed a speech. Your sister is married now, my mother said with finality. We have to support her. I stared at her, my mouth dry. And me? I asked. What about me? My father cleared his throat. Chloe and Marcus will live here, he said. They'll take your big room upstairs. Married couples need space. You can move to the small room in the back or maybe find another place. My lips trembled. That's my room. That was my fiancé. Chloe stepped closer, lowering her voice to a cold whisper. She said. He was your fiancé. Now he's my husband. You can't stay here. We need your big room. I turned to Marcus. He still refused to look at me. Something inside me cracked open, not just heartbreak, but a deep, painful clarity. A realization that no one in that room stood on my side. Not even my parents. I straightened my back. Fine, I said. I closed my laptop, walked upstairs, and packed my life into 2 suitcases. Clothes, toiletries, notebooks, the folder with our honeymoon plans, and my bank card with the $8,000 I had saved for a future that no longer existed. I carried everything down the stairs without help. No one stopped me. No one apologized. No one asked me to stay. I walked out of the house on Willow Lane, the place I had once called home, and didn't look back. The air outside felt strangely cold, even though it was summer. I dragged my suitcases to the bus stop at the end of the street, and by evening, I was checking into a cheap motel outside Harborview. The room smelled like old soap and stale curtains. The bed was stiff, the light dim, but it was mine. My space, my air, my escape. I lay on that bed, clutching a pillow, crying until my eyes burned and my throat hurt. I thought my life had ended that day. I thought everything I had built, everything I had dreamed of, had been destroyed. But I didn't know then that the story wasn't over. Not even close. The morning after I left Willow Lane, I woke up in the cramped motel room feeling like I had been dropped into someone else's life. The pillow smelled faintly of bleach, the air conditioner rattled like loose coins, and the cheap curtains let in a thin beam of light that cut across the room. I lay there on the hard mattress, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the previous day. Chloe's smile, Marcus's silence, my mother's cold practicality, my father's folded arms. My heart felt heavy, bruised, as though someone had reached into my chest and squeezed too hard. I didn't know what to do next. Should I look for another place to stay? Should I return to the house and demand answers? Should I call Marcus? The thought nauseated me. Should I call Chloe? That was even worse. So I lay there, still and exhausted, wishing the world would stop spinning for a moment. Then my phone rang. It was loud, jarring, slicing through the stillness of the room. I flinched at the sound and reached for it on the nightstand, still half asleep. When the screen lit up, my stomach lurched. Chloe, my first instinct was to ignore the call. After everything she had done, after taking my fiancé, my room, and even my parents' loyalty, she had no right to speak to me. But something deep inside me wouldn't let me silence the phone. Maybe it was old habit. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the leftover ache of sisterhood that even betrayal hadn't fully destroyed. I answered. What do you want? I asked, my voice cracked from sleep and grief. Chloe didn't greet me. She didn't even breathe deeply before the words burst out of her, high and sharp and jagged. Why didn't you tell me? She screamed. Why didn't you tell me he's not actually a man? Her voice was frantic, nearly hysterical. I sat up immediately, my heart pounding. What are you talking about? I asked, struggling to understand her accusation. He's not a real man, she cried. He's a liar. He's nothing. He's not who he said he is. Her words came fast and tangled, more emotion than explanation. I pressed my palm to my forehead, trying to steady my thoughts. I knew she didn't mean physically. She meant something deeper, his character, his truth, the lies he had hidden behind his suit and soft smile. Slow down, I said. Just tell me what happened. I could hear chaos behind her, drawers slamming, footsteps, the muffled voices of our parents, and even faint murmurs that sounded like neighbors gathering outside. Willow Lane was never quiet when something dramatic happened. I went through his bag, she said, her voice trembling. I wanted to see how much money he had or what kind of cards he uses. You know, normal wife stuff. Normal wife stuff. She said it with such bitterness that I could feel her shame through the phone. What did you find? I asked carefully. She breathed shakily, as though swallowing tears.
Letters, she said. Bills.
Debt notices. He owes over $60,000. Credit cards, old loans, everything. He lied about all of it. I felt sick. My hands tightened around the phone. And that's not all, she whispered, her voice breaking. His real name isn't even Marcus Hill. It's on the letters. His real name is Mark Hilliard. He just shortened it to look cleaner, more polished. And her voice cracked again. He's married already, Diana.
Married.
To some woman in Ohio. I found a copy of an old marriage certificate buried at the bottom of his bag. My blood ran cold. Are you sure? I asked, even though I already knew she wouldn't be calling me like this unless it was absolutely true. Yes, she screamed. He said he worked in real estate. He said he had a fortune coming in. He said he could buy me a new house in America and take me to Europe and spend pounds like they were nothing. He said he wanted someone more exciting than you. The last sentence hit me like a stone. I closed my eyes, breathing through the sting. He used me, she continued, voice breaking. He used me for our house, for mom and dad's support, for everything. And now the entire street knows. People from Willow Lane came over this morning. They heard us fighting. They know I married a man who isn't a real man at all, just a cheat hiding behind a fake name. Her sobs grew louder, raw. They're laughing at me, Diana, she choked out. I can't go outside. The neighbors are staring at the house like it's a circus. Mom and Dad are horrified. My life is ruined. I pressed a hand against my chest, imagining the familiar porch of the house, the neighbors whispering, Chloe's face twisted in panic as she realized the truth. And despite everything she had done to me, my heart softened. Pain is pain. Betrayal is betrayal. And she was drowning in both. I didn't know, I said. I swear I didn't know. There was a long silence. When she finally spoke again, her voice sounded small and frightened. I know you didn't, she whispered. If you had married him, you'd be trapped too. He told me last night he was planning to use your savings to pay off some business expenses. My $8,000. The money I had saved dollar by dollar. I felt my fingers tighten around the phone until my knuckles whitened. So you married him because you thought he had money? I asked. My voice held no anger, just tired truth. Yes, she whispered. I wanted everything. A big life. A nicer car. A husband who looked wealthy. I believed his watch, his suit, his fake charm. I thought I could get more than you. Her voice cracked. And now I have nothing. I married a fraud with another wife, a mountain of debt, and the whole neighborhood watching me fall apart. I don't know what to do. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I looked around the motel room. The stiff bed, the peeling wallpaper, the dim lamp, and for the first time since yesterday, I felt something unexpected. Relief.
It could have been me.
All of that could have been mine. The debt, the shame, the whispers, the ruined future. Instead, I had escaped, heartbroken but free. Finally, I said softly, "Chloe, I don't know how to fix this, but I'm glad I wasn't the one he trapped." She cried harder, and I listened, not as the sister she betrayed, but as the sister who finally understood the truth. Her greed had destroyed her life. My heartbreak had saved mine. The motel room became my shelter for 3 long days, though it never felt like anything more than a temporary hiding place. The walls were a dull beige, the carpet worn thin, and the air conditioner rattled like it was struggling to hold itself together. I spent $180 on cheap food and the room itself, trying to make sense of the chaos that had crushed my life. I cried until the tears simply stopped coming, until exhaustion taught me that even heartbreak eventually runs out of energy. On the 4th morning, something inside me shifted. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, just a quiet certainty settling into my bones. I couldn't stay in Harborview. I couldn't breathe the same air as the people who had chosen my sister's lies over my truth. I couldn't risk running into Chloe or Marcus or even my parents, who barely hesitated before pushing me out of the home I'd grown up in. I needed a clean break, a new start far from Willow Lane and everything it represented. So I packed my suitcases once more and walked to the bus station. The sky was clear, but the air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I bought a one-way ticket to Riverbend, a quiet city in New Hampshire that I had never visited before. All I knew was that its name sounded peaceful, and at that moment, peace was the only thing I wanted. When the bus arrived, I climbed aboard and took a seat by the window. As the miles passed, I watched the landscapes change, from coastal homes to forests, from familiar roads to places that held no memories of betrayal. Riverbend greeted me with a gentle hum of a small city moving at its own steady pace. I found a tiny studio apartment above a small convenience shop. The walls were cracked, and the view overlooked a parking lot, but the rent was $900 a month, and most importantly, it was mine. My own space. My own door. A place where no one could tell me to leave. Within a few weeks, I found a job at a local tax office. The work was simple: forms, receipts, quiet conversations with clients who were more confused than stressed. The office smelled like old paper and coffee, and there was something comforting in the rhythm of it: numbers, organization, predictability. A woman named Janet, who worked at the reception desk, took me under her wing and brought me a cup of coffee every morning. Small kindnesses felt huge during that time. Even though I had left Harborview behind, word still traveled. A cousin from Fairmont called one afternoon and told me how the story of Chloe and Marcus had spread through the entire town. Neighbors whispered about how Chloe had stolen my fiancé only to marry a man who wasn't who he claimed to be. They talked about his debts, his fake name, and the wife he had hidden in Ohio. My parents were humiliated, not just because of Marcus's deception, but because they had supported him so blindly. They had pushed me out of the house for a man who had fooled all of them. Chloe couldn't escape the consequences. Every time she stepped outside, the neighbors stared. Friends she once bragged to quietly distance themselves. My cousin said she rarely left the house anymore, partly out of shame and partly out of fear of what people might say. The life she had wanted, the attention, the admiration, the bigger and better everything, had collapsed in front of her. A week later, Chloe called me again. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. "I know I hurt you," she said. "I know I was greedy. I thought Marcus had money, and I thought I'd get a life better than yours. And now, I have nothing." I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued, "but I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." The apology didn't erase the pain, but hearing it softened something inside me. "I don't hate you," I told her quietly, "but I can't go back there. Not now." We ended the call on that fragile truth. As the months passed, Riverbend slowly became more than just a place to hide. It became a place to grow. I made friends with my neighbor, Grace, who worked at a bakery. She had a gentle laugh and a calm presence that made even heavy days feel lighter. On weekends, we walked along the river with cheap coffee and talked about simple things: the weather, books, work, life. About a year after moving, I joined a budgeting class at the local community center. That's where I met Oliver Reed. He was nothing like Marcus. Oliver was honest, humble, and sincerely kind. He worked as a school counselor and drove an old sedan that rattled almost as much as my motel air conditioner had. He didn't pretend to be more than he was, and that alone made him feel like a safe place. He asked me out to a diner, nothing fancy, and we split the bill, $34 down the middle. "I don't have a lot," he said with a shy smile, "but what I have is real." And for the first time in a long while, I believed someone. I didn't rush into anything. I took my time, opening my heart slowly, letting him see my past in pieces. He never tried to fix me. He just listened, steady and patient. With him, I learned that love doesn't need glitter or perfect words. It just needs truth. Sometimes, when I lie in my little apartment, listening to the quiet hum of Riverbend at night, I think back to that terrible day on Willow Lane. I remember Chloe's triumphant smile, Marcus's guilty silence, my parents' judgment. I remember how certain I was that my life had ended. But now I see it clearly. Losing them saved me. Walking away freed me. Starting over rebuilt me. This is my story, told in my own voice, rooted in America, shaped by heartbreak, but carried forward by hope. I lost a man who was never real, a house that never protected me, and a future that was never truly mine. But I found something far better. I found myself.